Hey, this is going to be an overview from doing 1k blight maps in SSF this league. Took about a month with farming up the blight maps and actually running them. Granted, I was doing other stuff in this time, such as farming expedition or blight, some other things like bossing as well, but mostly focused on blight. About 800 of these maps were just normal tier 14 plus blight maps, which can drop ravaged, with 201 of them being ravaged blight maps. Well, blight is for sure not the most active thing. At least you can go AFK in blight maps for 150 seconds and get some food, take a shower, do some exercise, just do some things to take a short amount of time, so it's not that bad. So main reason that I'm doing this was for collection, tried to get blight uniques. In total I got 29 blight uniques from these 1000 maps, with 85 of them, or not 85, 6 of them coming from ravaged maps. You can tell this because the only blight uniques that are eye level 85 can come from ravaged maps. Total, most of them were boots, some decent amount were gloves, only a few helms, and I am getting one of the ami after a total of 282 ravaged, including the 82 I ran last league. So the rates ended up being about 1 in 35 for me, however I could see it being between 1 in 30 and 1 in 40 to get a blight unique from a blight map. So what was it actually good for besides just blight uniques, which you can only get from there? Exceptional gems I think were one of the main ones. You can't really get too many of them in SSF after its rarity nerf, however they seem to drop pretty frequently. I'd say about 60% of these that I have here were just from the blight maps. As well as that, stack decks were another main one. This is from about 2.5 weeks, and I'd say 60% of these stack decks were from the blight maps. Other percent were from bit of heist, bit of expedition I did in that time. As well as that, fuse I think were another main one. Chrome's just a lot of basic currency from currency chests. GCPs also quite big since they can come from both currency chests and gem chests in quite a decent bulk. The tree I ended up using for this setup was this, pretty much just grabbing most all blight nodes, bestiary nodes, force scarab and sextant nodes, altar stuff, expedition I was running as well. One thing of note here, I didn't take this fused fungus because the currency oil extractor comes from blight chest, which I'm not 100% sure if it takes away or just adds on to the initial reward that blight chest gives, so it might or might not reduce your chances by a bit of getting blight maps. I just didn't want to take that risk since it wasn't really a benefit to me. Best area 2, I could get split beasts from it to split ravage maps if I needed, and expedition is just good for us stuff. Tree I have linked in the description if you want to take a look at it. It's okay. Could be better. One other thing to note here is that the 0.5% chance for maps to be duplicated works on blight maps, as well as the altar node between 10 and 15% chance for maps to be duplicated also works. These two things multiply on top of each other, so if both of them proc on the same map, you can get 4 blighted maps from one initial blight map drop. So the actual map that is used for this, a lot of people say frozen comboss or toxic sewers. I personally went with flooded mines. From my experience, it's a bit higher average blight chest per encounter than the others, as well as that because the boss comes midway through the map, you get a tiny amount more altars that are non-boss specific, one of those being chance for maps to be duplicated, so a bit more blight maps. What scarabs end up using, best area of course, blight, expedition, main 3 things I had entry. Railroad carry just because I'm still missing Waraf's charge. I'm not 100% sure if Railroad carry scarab affects the generic expedition drop rates, kind of aside from this video, but no real other good scarab to use if you're in trade, just like use a sack frag or another scarab of choice. So one thing that I came across was tainted oils. From my experience this league and last, I ran about 500 of my tier 14 blight maps corrupted and I had not a single tainted oil drop. However, I've only ran a few corrupted ravaged maps and I seem to drop them pretty frequently. I don't know if it's just like significantly weighted or they can only come from ravaged maps now. I know in the past they weren't insanely rare from just normal corrupted tier 14 blight maps. Something might have changed there. I don't know. That's just my personal experience with it. Seem to come frequently from corrupted ravage maps, not so frequently from, or not at all, from tier 14 plus. They might still drop, but I haven't had experience with it. So the oils that I would use for tier 14 plus non-ravage maps, I think 3 teal is just the way to go. It's hard to beat that. I guess you could technically argue 3 crimson, however it's hard to justify, especially if you're going for blight uniques, because it's not going to speed up at all the blight uniques rate. I should also mention that I'm pretty sure the blight uniques are just flat rate. They might be affected by something like the amount of bosses or the quant in the map, maybe, but it seems very likely that's just a flat rate. As for Ravage, the combo that I ended up using the most was 3 black, 3 opalescent, and 3 teal. If you can't use 3 teal, then you can probably go to indigo. That's what I'd probably go for, since on lanes that have a blight boss, you get more chests on average. You could just go for something like crimson if you don't want to deal with that extra risk as well. But you should be able to, on pretty much any build, at least go for indigo if you can't deal with teal. Extra speed from that. As for high investment ones, 3 gold, 3 silver, and 3 opalescent. Granted, in SSF you can't do this consistently, but it is quite a lot of rewards when you do it. It's about 4 or 5 times the rewards from chests from my experience. Maybe a bit more. So, should also mention that if you're doing Ravage maps in trade, you should always corrupt them. At least from my experience with getting a lot more tainted oils from corrupted Ravage than normal corrupted tier 14 plus blight maps. In SSF you only need a certain amount, but in trade you can just always sell them. They don't seem to be too rare from corrupted Ravage maps, so it's just a bit of extra profit. So in conclusion, blight's decent. Yeah, that's about it. It's okay. Can exercise or something while doing it. It's not bad. Blight. Yeah, that's about it.